Hi guys, welcome to the live video. So I'll be starting in a couple of minutes. I hope you can. I hope my voice is audible. So yeah, so we have interesting concepts that we'll be learning today. Uh, yeah, so we'll start. Okay, so here we go. We'll start. I'm going to turn. I'm just attempting to turn on my camera, and once it is done, we will begin. Okay, so hi everybody. So so happy to be connecting with you guys live. I'm going to be talking about the upcoming eclipse, which is going to happen on June 21, 2020. I've been talking about this eclipse for quite the last week in the various formats. I've written about it. I've shared some audio clippings on it. But today I'm going to talk about one specific aspect of the upcoming solar eclipse that I normally encounter. I've encountered it for the several years. But before I get into the topic for the day, which is the myths versus the facts, I'll tell briefly about the upcoming solar eclipse, so that you get the idea of the eclipse, and then it would make sense for me to jump into the topic of myths versus facts. Of course, if you have any questions around the solar eclipse, the myths that or something, anything that you've heard about the solar eclipse, you can please leave in the comments section. So I'll be able to see them, answer your questions. So please type in the comment box. I'll be able to see it and answer. So before that, let me start with the um, eclipse. So this eclipse that we're having on 21st is the solar eclipse, and it is a special type of solar eclipse that I think Chitra has joined. Hi Chitra,
Hi.
able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Am I audible?
I can see, yes.
Okay.
I'll continue on this
Yes, yes.
eclipse. Ring of fire eclipse that we use. So, yes, so I thought so you can introduce the with the and talking about the
Um, Obviously, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I think your video is frozen and your voice is not audible. All right, so I think there's some technical issue on Ovli's end. So till he gets back to us, let me just quickly welcome you all to the live. So, as you've already been told, our topic of discussion today is going to be solar eclipse myths versus facts. Okay.
Yes, I'm back. Yes, sorry, there was a brief moment of internet issues, so I'm back in. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'll continue with the
Yeah.
is it? Yeah. So the upcoming eclipse is again. I'll let me tell you quickly. Tell you what is a solar eclipse. Most of you may know it already. So it is when the Earth, Sun, and the Moon lines up. So in this order, like you have the Sun, and then you have the Moon, and then the Earth. So when they're all perfectly lined up, so like any object placed in the path of a light will that object, if it is opaque, the object will block the light, thereby casting a shadow right behind it. If it's a transparent object, it's you won't get shadows anyway. But if it's an object that is opaque, that can block the light and cast a shadow. So moon is an object that is opaque, and the sunlight is blocked by the moon, and it will leave a shadow right behind it. And the way the size of the source of sunlight and also the size of the moon makes the shadow that's going falling behind the moon to be a conical shaped shadow. And if that shadow, if the earth moves through that shadow, and then you call it like a total solar eclipse or a partial solar eclipse, depending on what part of the shadow the earth is moving. And this happens only when they're all lined up. Only if they're lined up, the shadow, it's possible for the shadow to fall on the earth. If it is above or below, the shadow won't fall. So that is very briefly what a solar eclipse is about. And this particular eclipse that we have is a special type of eclipse called as a ring of fire eclipse, because the orbit of the moon is not quite circular around the earth. It is elliptical, meaning the distance between the sun, the earth and the moon, it keeps changing in its orbit. So sometimes it's closer, sometimes it's farther. And also remember, the earth itself is moving in an elliptical orbit around the sun. So the distance between the earth and the sun itself will change in its orbit around the sun. So all these factors, keeping these factors in mind, sometimes when the moon moves in front of the sun, it is not quite able to block it. It just goes in front of the sun, leaving a ring around it. Sometimes when it's closer, it is able to block the sun. That you call it a total solar eclipse. But this time around, it is 99% of the sun is going to be blocked, leaving a very thin ring, which is 1% in surface area wise I am talking about. So that is why this eclipse is very special, because it's almost a total eclipse. Only 1% of the sun is going to be left out. So I think that is my first talk on the understanding the eclipse that's coming up. Chitra, yes.
Yes. Okay. So, like Hobly already mentioned, we have an upcoming solar eclipse in 2020 in this month. So, if you want to know a little more about it, about the do's and don'ts of eclipses and other things, you can watch our video that's titled Solar Eclipse 2020. The link to that is there in the description of this live, so you can head there once we're done with this session. Okay. All right. So, I think we also have quite a few people who are equally enthusiastic about being able to see the eclipse this year. So we will be
Yeah.
taking questions from the viewers. But before that, since we're discussing this very interesting topic of myths today, I think we should begin with demystifying some of the most popular superstitions and beliefs around eclipses.
Yeah.
So the first myth that I think is quite common among people is that eclipses are harbingers of something very bad that is about to happen. So, what is your scientific opinion on this particular belief?
Okay, so let me take it. Okay, first let me answer your question upfront. So there is no bad omen or good things. There is no bad things that is associated with an eclipse as well as good things. So nothing is about bound to happen because of an eclipse. It is just a shadow of the moon that is falling on the earth. But let me take you back to the roots of where it all started. So there's a saying that people fear things that they do not understand. It's quite natural. You when you do not understand something, and that something looks spectacular or something that is overwhelming you, and you do not understand why it happens, it has a natural tendency to create a sense of anxiety or fear, because you're not sure whether it's good for you or bad for you. And back then, several hundreds of years ago, when people did not have a very clear understanding of why eclipses happen, they were left with the feeling that this could mean something bad. And across civilizations and across cultures, people connected that to some demons eating up on the moon, or someone is trying to make the moon disappear, make the moon go vanish. So all these things tell us something, that people did not understand why eclipses happen. So that was the primary seed that led to all these folklores and stories around these eclipses, that people associated with always bad things. For example, kings thought whenever there is an eclipse, so there is something bad about to happen and people have to be prepared for war. An eclipse is a sign of that, and they in fact decide the timings of war based on eclipses. When eclipses happen, okay, maybe this is the best time to go for a war or not. And also in some of the cultures, people thought that eclipses could be a sign of a drought or famine or something that is bad about to happen for the entire humanity, and not just for the people who are observing the eclipse. So again, why did people believe that? One reason is people feared it. Second reason is there's always a very important term that will come later called as a confirmation bias. People use this term, like they tend to pick out things that happen that favors their beliefs, and tend to miss out on things that the times that do not happen. So I'll more on that. I'll answer maybe in more detailed sense later. So yeah.
All right. Okay, so what you said about people believing that the eclipse was actually some sort of disappearance or demons eating away. So that connects to this particular story, one of your stories for Mango Science Radio. You spoke about Columbus and the Bloody Moon, about how Columbus convinced the people of an island that, the eclipse was actually a result of the gods being angry. And so do you think that this particular belief still prevails in certain parts of the world, that an eclipse is a manifestation of God's wrath?
Um, yes, I do, but I'm not sure of the extent of belief. Back then, the understanding of the shadow falling on the moon was practically not there. But today, even people who believe in the fact that the eclipses are going to bring bad to them, it is bad omen for them, they know it is the shadow of the moon. So the understanding is there. Like back then, the understanding was not there, and people feared. Now, to a large extent, the fear is reduced, but still, people even today believing in the dangers because of the solar eclipse, they very well know that it is a shadow of the moon. But despite the fact, people know what is going on in the sky, the very clear mechanism of what is going on in the sky. There are other aspects of the eclipse that they do not understand very clearly. That makes them speculate on so many other things, like it is still bad and the gods are angry, and it could be a sign of a doom for the entire world. Like very clearly, the upcoming eclipse, a lot of people are looking at, and given the current scenario that coronavirus is spreading across the world and it is creating a wreck on humanity, people are like correlating that and this particular spread. So when incidents such as this infection that we're facing today happens during an eclipse, it is so easy for people to take in the fact that eclipses are bad. Yes, so it's still prevalent. Yes.
Right. Okay. So now there is a lot of people actually say that total solar eclipses produce a lot of harmful rays that can cause blindness, and there's one more side to this belief, that it's safe to look at an eclipse through sunglasses. So, what is your opinion? What would you say about these two assumptions?
Okay, so first of all, what I'm about to talk about the eclipse are not opinions, but I'm going to talk about facts. But my opinions would be for people who are believing in these facts, my advices on how to go about that. That could be my opinion, but I'm going to talk about scientific facts on the questions that you put forward. Number one, there is no harmful radiation that is going to come out of the sun during a total solar eclipse. It is always sun. Okay, so now to understand this, where is the source of energy for the sun coming from? It is coming from the heart of the sun, where something called as a nuclear fusion happens, where atoms are just bumping into each other and merging into, fusing into each other and releasing a lot of energy. So whether the moon moves in front of the sun or not, this process happens in the sun all the time. That process of source of energy for the sun is not altered by the fact that moon is moving in front of it. So the source of energy is unaltered. So now that energy that is created in the core of the sun or any star comes out of the sun and goes in all 360 direction, like in all directions they radiate out, and they radiate out in all possible radiations, gamma rays, x-rays, uv rays, infrared, and you have visible like the rainbow colors, and even you have infrared waves. So they basically emit radiation in all possible spectrum. But again, not all possible radiations are put out in the same intensity. Gamma rays are minimum, and x-rays are also very less, and they come from very small part of the sun's, like for example solar corona. The majority of the thing comes from infrared and visible light, and of course uv lights also come in. And most of these radiations are blocked by the atmosphere of the earth. Like for example, we know ozone layer is blocking the uv lights, and x-rays and high energy radiations are blocked by the atmosphere itself. So it is a certain part of the spectrum that are not very harmful that are reaching the earth, and it illuminates the entire earth for us. But also remember the fact these radiations come on any given day, not just during an eclipse, because the sunlight is falling on earth every single day. We have sunrise and sunsets. It is falling on us on every single day. But during an eclipse, if at all anything happens, it is that the radiations that are already reaching the earth are reduced in their intensity, because it is nothing but a big chunk of rock, the moon, that is blocking the incoming radiation. So whatever radiation that already reaches the earth is much lesser on that day, because the moon is blocking it. Literally the moon is taking all those radiation that were supposed to reach earth, so thereby casting a shadow on which the earth will be moving. So in this sense, there is no new radiation that is being created during an eclipse. In fact, whatever radiation was already reaching the earth is being blocked. So in fact, it is much lesser radiation on that day. So to understand why the belief that new radiation could be coming out is not that, okay, here is the thing. Now people think something bad is going to happen. They believe in the fact something is bad is happening to the earth, and to justify that, or to find a reason why something bad would happen, they are trying to find reason. So if you look at that, they look at the effect and try to find a cause. The effect itself is not real. So they have an illusionary effect, and that effect they are trying to connect it to the eclipse. And when the question is put forward, how does the eclipse affect this illusionary effect, then they come up with this cause that, okay, there's some radiation that is coming out of the sun during the eclipse. And when you go one step back, what is the cause of this radiation, then you are lost, because there is no cause. In fact, there is no mechanism, there is no nothing. There is, moon has got something special, like it has got some special atoms where through which the sunlight goes through, and then suddenly these things come out of the moon. No, nothing happens. It's just a chunk of rock that is blocking the light. So the whole fact that new harmful radiations are coming out during an eclipse is completely, absolutely false. There is absolutely no scientific evidence, and if at all anything, the intensity is reduced on that. And as far as the second question is concerned regarding the solar glasses, not solar glasses, but the sunglasses you talk about. Look, the sunglasses or the Polaroids or the X-ray sheets that people normally use when they pile them up to look at the eclipse are completely dangerous, completely not advisable at all. So to safely observe an eclipse, the amount of sunlight that should be reaching your eyes, it should be 1/100th of a percent, which means 100 times less than a percent of light that is coming from the sun should reach your eye. You can imagine how much less amount of eye should reach your eye. All these Polaroids or sunglasses let more than 20 or 30% of the light. Even the best Polaroids that you have will let 20% of the light to pass through, which is like totally disastrous for your eye. But you might ask, so you told me that there is no harmful radiation coming out of the sun, but you're saying that your eyes will get damaged. Look, I'm talking about that a solar radiation or the radiation from the sun that is not harmful in the way that people believe that the pregnant women will get affected, or something bad is going to happen to the entire world, or new diseases are going to come up. In that sense, there is no new radiation, no radiation that is going to affect them. but there are existing radiation that is already from the sun, and that can harm your eye. And just not just during an eclipse, on any given day, if you look up at the sun, you can't like look up at the sun for more than 5 or 6 seconds. Your eyes will strain a lot, and you'll get tears in your eyes, because your eyes cannot take that amount of sunlight getting into your eye. And also, you would have noticed naturally that your eye, when it looks like a very bright source of light, not the sun, it could be your LED light in your room. When you look at it, your pupils will naturally shrink in size. In Tamil they call it kannu koosradunu solluvaanga. Like in English, I do not know equivalent word. Your eyes get hurt, and thereby your pupils will automatically try to shrink, thereby limiting the amount of light that is getting into your eye. So that's a natural defense mechanism to protect your own eye that your body is doing, thereby limiting the light, shrinking the eye. But during an eclipse, there is another problem. The moon is moving in front of the sun, so the amount of intensity of light drops significantly. So now what your eye is tricked into is that it thinks the amount of sunlight that is actually coming from the sun may not be harmful to my eye. So instead, the natural defense mechanism that your body is used to, that is the shrinking of the pupil, is not kicked in during that eclipse moment. So your eye keeps more, and as the sky darkens, as the moon moves in front of the sun, your eye is like, oh, now this seems to be comfortable, I don't have to shrink my pupil. Your natural mechanism of shrinking the pupil is not kicked in. So thereby, your pupil keeps its usual size open. So thereby, the natural defense mechanism is no longer there to protect your eye from letting in a lot of light, and that will damage your like eyes sometimes permanently, or sometimes reasonably enough that there will be a mild damage for a long time. So that is why the radiations are very harmful when viewed through the naked eye. It's not because of any new radiation, but because of the existing radiation from the sun that will harm your eye, but your eye is not able to kick in the natural mechanism. And sunglasses are no good in blocking those lights. There is a special type of filter called a black polymer filter, and some other materials they have, which can block the required amount of light to safely view the eclipse.
Okay. Okay, I think that was very informative. And so I just have one last question for you. I think this belief is more common among those who have a more academic approach to the eclipse. So
Okay.
there's this common belief that there are no total solar eclipses at Earth's north or south poles. So how much of this belief is true or untrue?
No, so there is one eclipse happening in not South Pole, but in Antarctica, very close to South Pole next year. In 2021, there is an eclipse, total solar eclipse that will be visible from Antarctica, which is essentially South Pole. Okay, in fact, from South Pole, 80% of the eclipse would be visible. So it is completely possible that the total eclipse, the shadow of the total eclipse can exactly go over South Pole. But again, it is rare. But the rarity of the occurrence in North Pole and South Pole is only as rare as the eclipse happening on any other parts of the world. So, for example, in Coimbatore, let me tell you, in India, for example, we don't have an eclipse in this century, total solar eclipse. The total solar eclipse last it happened in 2008, I guess, in India, and the next total solar eclipse would be visible from India only in the next century. So it's very rare. So, and it is true for any given point on the Earth, because the reason for the rarity of the solar eclipses is because the shadow of the total eclipse is very small. So the moon is a very small object, and the shadow cast by the moon would be probably 100 kilometers wide, or probably 60 kilometers wide, the shadow. So imagine people who are in that 60-kilometer width on Earth, only they can experience a total solar eclipse. And for people to be in the same 60 kilometers every time an eclipse occurs, it's very rare. Say the 60 kilometer from any part of the world anytime. So the rarity is, it is rare in that sense. But how rare are the eclipses themselves? They're very common. There are at least 1 or 2 eclipses, total solar eclipses happening every year. So the next year, it's happening visible over Antarctica, and in 2023, it's visible over Australia, North Australia or West Australia, and in 2024, it's visible over the United States. And this year, in 2020, there is an eclipse that is going over South America, over parts of Argentina and Chile. So every year there is a total solar eclipse. But who is going to experience the eclipse? Because it's a very small shadow, the chances are very less. And in that sense, North Poles and South Pole will also, at some point in time, the shadow will fall on them. They're only as rare as happening on any other place on the earth. Yes.
Okay. Okay, all right. Those were some wonderful answers. So now let's just see if we have any questions from the viewers. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that you must have heard from people around you about what to do and what not to do during an eclipse. So you can drop your questions in the comments and we'll take them up.
So in the meanwhile, as they type in the questions, I would like to talk about some of the myths that I heard of, and I would like to address them. For example, I've been teaching astronomy for the last 6 years, and there have been moments when kids could not participate in the eclipse events that we organize as part of the Manga Astronomy Club. Then we inquire the parents, why couldn't the kids come? Then they tell, the eclipses are bad and our elders are not letting us watch the eclipse. Sometimes it's a very rare eclipse. In fact, in 2018, total lunar eclipses happened twice that was visible from India. Two total lunar eclipses in the same year, in 2018. The next total lunar eclipse would be visible only, I think, in 2023 or 24. So there was such a rare moment, but few kids could not attend it because of this superstitions. And one of the parents told me that the parent was pregnant with a kid, and it was the elders who told them, like, venturing out during this time would harm the person who is pregnant, and also the kid who is yet to be born. So this is a very common belief that the pregnant women and the kid are affected during an eclipse. So now the question they should ask, look, I'm not saying, like, like you don't have to, like, there is no harm and things like that, although there is no scientific evidence for there is no effect because of the eclipse on pregnant women. But I want you guys to run through your mind what could be the reason why these eclipses are bad. So one of the things that people normally say is that one harmful radiation is the reason why those harmful radiations that are coming from the eclipse will affect the child, or it will get into the cells or tissues of the kids, and thereby it might affect the kids. Now, if you look at very clearly, so now the source is the radiation that is believed to affect the pregnant women or the kid. Now, if you go back to the root cause and actually understand whether there are any harmful radiations at all, then you come to an understanding there is no harmful radiation. So there's absolutely no harmful radiation. So the cause has been eliminated. So when the cause has been eliminated, then obviously the effect is not there. So the very fact that the people believed in the danger for a pregnant woman or an unborn kid is because they assumed that there was a cause. So the effect was assumed to have a cause. Now, when you go back to the roots and analyze and study in all the possible ways whether the cause is true, the cause has been scientifically invalidated. So now once that is there, and that should give the confidence that there is no effect on the kids. So now, even if beyond this, if people think that pregnant women and kids are affected by the solar eclipse, then the question is, what else is causing it? In what other ways apart from the radiation can the kid and the women can get affected by the eclipse? Then there are no parameters. As far as I can think, there is no mechanism through which they can be affected. But if someone comes up with some mechanism, we can talk on that. We can scientifically analyze that. But as far as the scientific, all the possibilities have been analyzed so far, and there is no other way in which the pregnant woman or the kid can be affected. At the end of this, it's just a shadow. So if you think a shadow can affect pregnancy, then any shadow should affect pregnancy, not just the shadow of the moon. Because at the end of the day, shadow is the same. Whether it is your room's LED light shadow, or sunlight's shadow, or shadow that you get by sitting under a tree on a very sunny day, the shadow is the same. So if a shadow can affect pregnancy, any shadow should be able to affect pregnancy. The shadow of the moon is not special in any way. The moon's shadow is also absence of light. The tree's shadow is also absence of light. So that would be my explanation for people who believe in pregnancy being affected by eclipses.
All right. So we have one question here. Someone's asked where you can get solar glasses.
Yeah, so unfortunately, solar glasses are a little difficult to mobilize during this time, because mobilizing solar glasses is a challenge in this coronavirus times. But however, we do have some solar glasses with us, and we have contacts with people who can get you solar glasses. So if you get in touch with us, give us a message and that how many solar glasses you need. That is, I'm talking from Coimbatore. So for Coimbatore, we have someone who can arrange for solar glasses. But the best place to get solar glasses from would be if in your city there is a planetarium or an astronomy society. Best place would be a planetarium. Like for example, in Bangalore there is a planetarium, and in Delhi there is Nehru Planetarium. So those people will have solar glasses stocked up. So you can reach out to them and get their solar glasses. But if you are in Coimbatore, and if you want solar glasses, you can reach out to us. We can arrange for the solar glasses. But if you want to know where to get solar glasses from other cities, you just drop us a message, like from where you are. We'll try to get you connected to different places from whom you can reach out to for solar glasses. Yeah.
All right. So I think that's all of that's the only question we had in the comments. So is there anything else that you would like to share, Hobli?
Yes, one more myth that we very common, and it's like so common, is the food getting poisoned during an eclipse. I would really like to talk about it. So, like I've experienced so many eclipses in my life, lunar and couple of solar eclipses, and I've had food. Like I make it a point to eat during the eclipse, but it doesn't depend on whether I'm affected by solar eating during a solar eclipse or not. What matters is the fact. So now when you claim that food is poisoned during an eclipse, it is an effect. Food getting poisoned is an effect, and there should be some cause. So now we'll have to get back to understand what is it in the solar eclipse that possibly can poison the food. So now when you go back to that route of understanding what is it going to be, again we get come back to the very common points put forward: some harmful radiation. Look, the harmful radiation is a very generic and abstract term that is being used to anything that happens. Okay, so people say there's a harmful radiation that gets into the food, and it helps the bacteria multiply in a short time. It multiplies in several quantities and thereby poisoning the food. But like we said, the harmful radiation that is coming from the sun has been debunked. There is no harmful radiation. So that cause has been eliminated. So that cause being eliminated will eliminate a lot of other effects also. Multiple effects that has been attributed to this one cause. Now, there is another common thing that people talk about, food being poisoned. Suddenly, since the earth is moving through a sudden shadow, the temperatures drop, and that since the temperatures drop, that is affecting the food and being poisoned. And that is an even more ridiculous claim to make, given the fact that the food is this is not a moon is not the only shadow that is going to fall on the moon. You keep it in you keep your food in the night time. In the night time, when the food is left, it is practically there is no light falling on it. It's in an eternal shadow for 12 hours. Not eternal shadow meaning it's in the shadow for a long time. So that shadow is no different from a shadow from the moon. And you keep it in refrigerator, deliberately lowering the temperature, thereby to keep the food good. So when you start asking these questions, that I keep my food in the shade all the time, and I keep my food in the refrigerator all the time, and the bacteria don't multiply during that shadow, but suddenly during the shadow that is because of the moon, the bacteria multiply. Look, that is one line of reasoning. The second line of reasoning, give the benefit of doubt to them. Okay, let us say, take your hypothesis at face value. Let us understand, let us experiment whether it is actually getting poisoned. So now when you look at that, the food has been multiple tests conducted across several countries that the food is not getting poisoned during an eclipse. And trust me, the food, if it gets poisoned, and it can be attributed to so many other factors. Maybe the food was already about to get spoiled. It was not freshly cooked food. Maybe there was some insect that fell into the food that poisoned the food. So there could be so many other factors that could be considered even if a food gets poisoned. I can give you a very I think there are some questions coming from kids, but let me say one very important point to address. Let us say, for example, it's a hypothesis that I make, just like so many other myths that we have. Let us say solar eclipses cause cancer. Let us just say, let's say solar eclipses are a very good reasons. During an eclipse, it is a very primary reason for cancer. So let us take a data analysis. So let us say we have an eclipse this year. On June 21, we have an eclipse, and we collect the data of people who are infected with cancer this year. I'm just saying, let's say 5% of the people were infected. Let's say 20%. Let's say 20% of cancer patients were reported this year, and you had eclipse. So now it might be tempting to tell, look, we had 20% of the people who had cancer because of the eclipse. We had an eclipse and we had 20% of cancer being reported this year. So now, though it is tempting to believe in that fact, if you just closely observe, it would have been 20% every year. Or probably there have been years where it was 25%. So a statistically common figure can be attributed to anything that practically anything that you want. So maybe there was a moment where someone coughed this year and 20% of the cancer occurred. It could be as simple as that reason. So the cause and effect need to be connected. So if 20% cancer rate is the rate every year, then how can you attribute it to solar eclipse? Let's say solar eclipse, let's say 80% of the people were reported having cancer in that particular year. Then it's a huge jump than the previous statistics. Then it might deserve a look into the fact of whether solar eclipses are actually causing cancer. But even then, you have to be very cautious, because is the solar eclipse the only reason because of the 80% increase in the cancer effect? It could be maybe that there was a global leak of some gas that spread across the globe that affected the cancer rate to be very high. Maybe there was a very poisonous gas that leaked in a local area, affecting everybody in the population, and that eclipse happened to be happening at that time. So it is a very tricky situation. Like if you ask a few questions, then it will take you to all the possible answers, and then rather than right away believing that eclipses are harbingers of bad and good things. I think I can take questions now. I spoke enough on this topic. Yeah.
Okay. There's a question which says that last year a solar eclipse occurred, and I had school at that time. When at break time I went to the restroom, I tried to see the eclipse with my naked eyes, but my eyes burnt lightly. Why is that so?
Yeah, so who were that? I do not know the name of the kid. Maybe I said Harsha. So look, solar eclipses should not be viewed with naked eye. It will hurt your eye. It's very clear. It's very scientific. There is no myth. It is a fact, because your pupil of the eye is not able to shrink. The natural mechanism of shrinking is not happening, so it will hurt your eye. So the only way to see solar eclipse safely is through a approved solar filter. Okay, now does it mean that I cannot see solar eclipse at all with the naked eye? There is only one time that you can see a solar eclipse with the naked eye, and that is during a total solar eclipse, where the entire sun is blocked out. And again, you have to be very careful. The entire sun being blocked out will remain for only 1 or 2 minutes, probably 3 minutes. So for those brief 2 to 3 minutes, when the entire sun is blocked out by the moon, for a brief 1 or 2 minutes, you can remove your glass and look at the sky, because the sun is completely blocked out. And quickly, the moment sun starts coming out, the moon starts moving away, you should put your solar glasses back on. And that happens only during a total solar eclipse. But in annular solar eclipse, for example, the one that is coming up on 21st, and one happened last year on December 26th, there is no moment during the eclipse the entire sun will be blocked out. Even during the maximum eclipse, 1% of the sun would be still visible, so it is not safe to even observe the eclipse at the maximum phase. You still need your solar glasses on during the entire solar eclipse. Yes.
All right. Okay, so I think that's the end of questions.
I think the one question asked how Einstein predicted eclipse. Now, for that question, Einstein did not predict eclipse. No, look, eclipses are not is not predicted by Einstein. Like there are astronomers who have a list of eclipses predicted for several centuries. For example, for the next a few hundred years, people know when eclipses are going to happen. But what Einstein predicted was an entirely different thing that could be tested during an eclipse. So he thought that he proposed, or rather hypothesized, that the sunlight could be bent by a massive object, and an eclipse was a perfect setup, a natural setup during which his hypothesis whether the light could be bent could be tested. In fact, it turned out to be that the eclipse proved to prove his hypothesis, and it was validated during that during several other eclipses that will eventually follow. So that was what Einstein predicted. He did not predict the eclipse itself. That is predicted by like astronomers. Yeah.
All right. So about this, about to learn about Einstein's association with the eclipse, you can hear this story of from Mango Science Radio. I've put the link in the comments section, so you can probably head there and hear the entire story. So I think that's the end of questions for today. So
Yes.
thank you so much, Obli, for sharing your knowledge with us, and I'm sure it was
Yes.
an informative session
And
for
if
a lot of
if
people.
kids have any more questions, please leave it in the chat box or send us a message. We'll be more than glad to clarify those things to you. And also, I think you can tell about the live telecast that we're doing on Sun. So I'll tell myself. So we will be from Mango Education on YouTube channel and our Facebook channel. We'll be live telecasting the entire eclipse from different parts of the country on the same day from places like in North India and Coimbatore and Dehradun and Kurukshetra. So please watch out for this channel where we'll be live telecasting the entire eclipse right from the beginning to the end on our channel live. So yes.
Yes. And like Obli said, you can drop your questions in the comments, or you can even send us a message on this number. Please note it down. I will also type it in the comments. 9952243541. You can message us on this number, and you can ask us your questions, or if anyone in Coimbatore wants to get in touch with us for the glasses, for the filters, you can also message us on this number. And I think with that, we will end the session today. So, this list of myths is definitely not exhaustive. So, if you come across anything that you have a doubt about or something that doesn't seem rational, you can definitely research about it and find out, or you can also send your questions to us and we'll make sure that we respond to you at the earliest. And
One
yes,
thing, except for the fact that you have to look at the eclipse with the solar filter, everything else is a do. Everything else is safe. The only thing you have to be safe about during a solar eclipse is you need to watch it with a solar filter. You can be like you are as usual. You can be like you are on any other day.
all right. Okay. So anyone who hasn't watched this live, or if you know someone who would like to, hear about this, you can always access this live anytime on our channel. And we've also started posting science stories on our channel. You can access them through this playlist called Mango Science Radio. So if you like the combination of science and storytelling, then you should definitely check this out. If you liked this session, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel and make sure you hit the bell icon so that every time we post a video or we go live, you will get notified. So, yes, thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Obli, for your time.
Thank you, Chitra. Yes, I love the interaction and the questions as well. Yeah.
Yes, so we'll catch you on the next live. All right.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.